Today's video we're going to discuss about supply chain management. Our first learning outcome, we want to cover the definition of supply chain management, and we want to also look at the components of supply chain management. When we talk of supply chain management, we are talking of the flow of materials, information, money, and services from raw material suppliers through factories, warehouses, and to the end customers. The first activity in supply chain is movement of materials from suppliers. Suppliers, we are talking of the primary industry. That is basically, we are talking of farms, we are talking of mines. And then that material is taken into manufacturing, that is processing. And then when the material is processed, it either becomes finished products or semi-finished products, which will then be supplied to the end customers or the end users. Now let's look at the components of supply chain management. Supply chain management has got three basic components. We've got one, upstream supply chain. Then two, internal supply chain and value chain. Three, downstream supply chain. Upstream supply chain, that is activities which happen before manufacturing. Then internal supply chain, we are talking of activities which are done during manufacturing. Downstream supply chain, we are looking at activities which are done after manufacturing. Now, let me just take a look again on the components of supply chain management. Right, we said upstream supply chain. Those are the processes or the activities which occur before manufacturing or which occur before conversion of raw materials into deliverable products or services. Example of those activities which happen before manufacturing is procurement. Procurement is made up of a range of activities which include sourcing of raw materials and also establishing with a relationship with those suppliers of raw materials, and also planning on how those raw materials should be delivered to the manufacturers. That's procurement. Let's move on to internal supply chain. Internal supply chain, we are looking at the activities which happen during manufacturing. Right? These activities include manufacturing itself, receiving, purchasing, quality assurance inspection, invoice. It also includes sales orders, picking, packing, sales commission, returns, processing. When you are talking of returns, we are talking of products which move from now the customers back to the manufacturer. Those are returns. This can happen because maybe the product is faulty, maybe it could be need for recycling, or maybe the product is damaged. Now let's move on to downstream supply chain. Downstream supply chain, we are looking at the processes which occur after manufacturing of the product. These processes include warehousing, that is storage of the products, logistics, that is distribution of products to either business customers or to end users. Let's look at supply chain components again in more detail. Let's look at procurement. Procurement, when you are talking of procurement, we are talking of the source. This involves selection of dependable suppliers of raw materials needed for production. But then, after sourcing the product, we go to manufacturing. Manufacturing, that is to make the products. This involves processing the raw materials into finished or semi-finished products. Right, when the products are manufactured, sometimes there is no ready demand for these products, which means there is need for warehousing. Warehousing, this involves the storage of either raw materials or finished goods before they are used. The fourth component is logistics, which includes distribution and transportation. Now let's move on to learning outcome 2. Learning outcome 2, we are going to discuss about the value chain. And here we want to understand the concept of value chain. We also want to understand Porter's value chain model. A value chain is a set of activities that a firm operating in a specific industry performs in order to deliver a valuable product or a service for the market. Let me give you an example of education service. For a student to receive a quality education service, there are a lot of activities which should be done. Not only the activities which are done by the lecturer, but there are other activities which are done by other players in the supply chain. For example, the librarian is involved in the value chain. Human resources is also involved in the value chain. IT people, they are also involved in the value chain. Cleaners, securities, they are also involved in the value chain. So we are basically talking of all the activities, primary activities and also secondary activities, which are needed in order to deliver a product or a service to the market. That's what we mean by value chain. Porter summarized value chain by using a diagram. According to Porter, the value chain activities can be classified into two, that is primary activities and secondary activities. Secondary activities are the supporting activities. Primary activities, those are the core activities which are needed for a product to be manufactured. Examples of primary activities, we have got 1, inbound logistics. Inbound logistics, this involves the movement of raw materials from suppliers to manufacturing. Then we have got 2, production and operations. This involves the processing of the raw materials into finished products or services. 3, we have got outbound logistic. This is the movement of finished products from manufacturers to customers. Then 4, we have got marketing and sales. Marketing and sales include all the activities which are done in order to communicate with the potential customers. It includes activities such as advertising, activities such as public relations, publicity, personal selling, and direct marketing. Then the last one is service. Service includes all the services which is provided to the customer after purchasing the product. It includes services such as the guarantees, repairs, and warranties. On the secondary activities or supporting activities, we have got the human resources, which is responsible for recruitment, training and development, and also implementing the disciplinary procedure. Then we also have technology, that is all the types of technology which is needed in order to produce the products. And then we have got the strategy of producing the products, including also research and development. Let's move on to learning outcome 3. Learning outcome 3, we are going to look at restructuring of supply chain. Here our learning objectives, we want to understand vertical and horizontal integration. We also want to understand virtual organizations, or we can say virtual integrations. Vertical integration is an arrangement in which the supply chain of a company is owned by that company. There are two types of vertical integration. We have got backward and forward vertical integration. Backward integration, this is whereby the organization takes ownership of the supplier of raw materials. For example, let's say an organization like Botswana Meat Commission takes ownership of farms which produce beef. That is backward integration. The advantage of backward integration is that the company will control the supply of raw materials. Then we also have forward integration. This is whereby the organization moves closer to the market. This can be done by purchasing some retailers. For example, let me go back to the previous example. Botswana Meat Corporation can buy some butcheries in order to control the market of the products. The other type of integration is horizontal integration. Horizontal integration is the process of a company increasing production of goods or services at the same part of the supply chain, or we can say at the same level of the supply chain. A company may do this via internal expansion, acquisition, or merger. The process can lead to monopoly if a company captures the vast majority of the market for that product or service. Here we have got a typical example of Choppies in the retail industry. Choppies has acquired quite a number of other supermarkets in that industry. Like you can have an example of Choppies acquiring OK along the Western Bypass. That's an example of acquisition. It's also a typical example of horizontal integration. Choppies acquiring Super Silver is again an example of horizontal integration. Let's move on to another type of integration, which is visual integration. Visual integration stitches together a business with partners that are treated as if they are inside the company. Let me give you an example of the relationship between Choppies and Mascom. You can actually go to Choppies and access some of the Mascom services like MyZaka. That is a typical example of visual integration. Visual integration can improve process coordination and control and help to better manage demand volatility, allowing manufacturers to substitute information for inventory and thereby improve resource utilization of all parties. Let's move on to learning outcome 3. Learning outcome 3, we want to look at e-supply chain management. Our learning objectives, we want to understand what is e-supply chain. We also want to understand the benefits of e-supply chain. We have defined supply chain as the flow of materials, information, money, and services from raw material suppliers through factories and warehouses to the end customers. Now, e-supply chain, we are talking of a supply chain that is managed electronically, usually with web technologies. What it means here is procurement is going to be done electronically, manufacturing is going to be done electronically, distribution it's also going to be done electronically. Inventory management is also going to be done electronically. So basically we are saying all the activities of supply chain are now being done electronically. That's e-supply chain management. Let's look at the advantages of e-supply chain management. 1, it minimizes inventory levels. 2, it optimizes production and increases output. 3, it decreases manufacturing time. 4, it optimizes logistics and distribution, streamline order fulfillment, reduce the costs associated with these activities. Now let's look at the disadvantages of e-supply chain. E-supply chain is a complex process and requires many activities and expensive infrastructure such as the internet, the websites, the intranets, and the like, portals and the like. What it means here is e-supply chain can only be implemented by bigger organizations. Thank you very much for listening.